8-year-old Maya Johnson, in her crisp white dress with sunflowers, clutched her worn purple backpack like a shield. She didn't know the journey ahead would test her in ways her mother couldn't imagine. It was a cool, overcast day in late October at Philadelphia International Airport, and the Global Airways jet sat waiting like a giant aluminum whale. Maya was used to flying alone, but today felt heavier. She missed the comforting scent of her mother's coconut-scented hair and the solid weight of her hand. Just moments ago, Maya had quietly performed their special, complicated handshake in her mind, a comforting ritual full of inside jokes and finger snaps. Her mother's voice, a quiet reminder that we are the daughters of women who survived impossible things, a sentiment that felt miles away as she boarded the enormous plane alone. The gate agent, Preston Alvarez, a kind man who had smiled warmly, secured the bright yellow unaccompanied minor lanyard around her neck. He treated the piece of plastic not as a burden, but as a badge of responsibility, ensuring she knew her seat, 12D, the window seat, just as requested. Maya thanked him politely. She carried herself with a maturity beyond her 8 years, a trait her mother, Evelyn, had carefully cultivated. Her true destination was Denver, where she was scheduled to give a science presentation on aerospace engineering, a topic she loved. Her purple backpack was filled with detailed sketches of aircraft and aerodynamics, evidence of a mind far more focused than most children her age. Maya boarded with the first group, a privilege granted to travelers to help them settle. She found her seat easily, tucking her backpack carefully under the seat in front. As soon as she buckled in, she pulled out her notebook and pencil, her focus immediately drawn to the majestic wing visible through the small glass. She began sketching the flaps and rivets, trying to capture the precise engineering she admired. This was her safe place. But the tranquility was short-lived. A moment later, the cabin was sliced by the brisk passage of Karen Miller, the senior flight attendant. Karen was a woman whose blonde hair was pulled back so tightly it seemed to stretch her face into a permanent scowl. Her blood-red lipstick made her expressions look even more venomous. Karen was sweeping through the cabin, checking bins, but when her eyes brushed over Maya and the bright yellow lanyard, she didn't even offer a polite smile. Her glance was one of utter contempt and professional annoyance, as if the 8-year-old was a problem to be managed, not a passenger to be protected. Karen clearly believed that dealing with unaccompanied minors was nothing more than unwelcome babysitting duty. Maya instinctively sank a little deeper into her seat, feeling the chill of the flight attendant's judgment. She was safe in her paid-for seat 12D, but the rising sound of the next boarding group, specifically a loud, entitled voice approaching, meant that her quiet concentration was about to be shattered. We've set the stage for a moment of unfolding injustice, and you, the dedicated viewer, are right here with us for the subtle details that matter most. If you appreciate the background that shows character and foreshadows conflict, let me know you're locked in for the whole journey by dropping the number 8, symbolizing Maya's innocent age, in the comments below. This story is just beginning, and you won't want to miss the shocking moment justice finally arrives. Join the Black King family by hitting that subscribe button and turning on notifications. Your support is the fuel that keeps us telling these powerful stories of resilience and accountability. Now, let's find out what happens when that entitled voice reaches row 12. The quiet calm of the cabin was abruptly shattered by Mrs. Thompson, whose sharp, entitled voice demanded to know why a child was in her son's coveted window seat. Maya looked up, startled, as the Thompson family blocked the aisle. The parents, dressed in expensive casual wear, carried themselves with an air of entitlement that suggested the world existed to serve them. The mother pointed at Maya's seat with thinly veiled aggression. "Excuse me," Mrs. Thompson said loudly. "This seat is Braden's. We paid extra for the window. He gets airsick. He absolutely needs the view." Maya clutched her boarding pass tighter, remembering her mother's instructions to always be polite, advice that Karen Miller seemed determined to exploit in the absence of a guardian. Maya politely held up her pass. "But it says 12D right here. My mama checked me in online yesterday." Karen Miller, sensing an opportunity to exercise her small authority, materialized instantly. She took Maya's boarding pass, then the Thompson boys, and barely glanced at either. Her expression hardened instantly. Without asking any further questions, She announced loudly that there had been a gate error and a double booking. She completely ignored Maya's quiet statement about checking in online. Karen's eyes darted between the affluent, demanding Thompson parents and the lone black girl with the yellow lanyard. The calculation was swift and brutal. She quickly sided with the adults, already treating Maya's ticket as less valid. Karen's voice dropped to a patronizing sneer as she addressed the 8-year-old. "All right, sweetheart," she said, making the word sound like an insult. "You're going to need to move." She led Maya 3 rows back to the misery of 12B, a middle seat squeezed between a large man already asleep and snoring, and a frazzled woman with a relentlessly crying infant. Just as Maya began to plead her case again, Karen delivered the cruel justification. "Since your mother isn't here to advocate for you, we'll need to reseat you." The words were chillingly clear, revealing that this was a decision based purely on vulnerability and power, not on protocol. A younger flight attendant named Sarah Chen, who had a genuinely kind demeanor, appeared from the galley. She looked horrified. Sarah leaned in and quietly reminded Karen of the strict policy manuals. "Diane, she has an unaccompanied minor tag. We're supposed to keep them in their assigned seats." Karen shot Sarah a look that could melt steel. "I'm handling it, Sarah," she snapped, the public dismissal designed to silence any further dissent. Sarah hesitated, lacking the seniority to challenge her superior, and regretfully backed away. Maya tried to be brave, her lip trembling as she asked for an aisle seat. "So I can see something." Karen's response was pure ice, cutting off all hope. She delivered the final, biased justification. "Be grateful you have a seat at all." Maya scrambled into the middle seat, her small figure instantly dwarfed and trapped. She sat miserable and alone, watching the Thompson family settle into their coveted window seat with utter indifference to the chaos they had caused. Trapped in 12B, Maya could only watch as the Thompson boy immediately put his iPad against her window, realizing this flight would be a lot longer than 5 hours. 30,000 feet above the ground, the constant, chilling presence of Karen Miller's judgment was worse than the turbulence or the cramped middle seat. The airplane hummed along at cruising altitude, but the journey was anything but smooth for Maya. Her yellow lanyard, meant for protection, now felt like a target, signifying her vulnerability and isolation. The crying infant next to her had finally fallen quiet, but Maya, feeling overwhelmed and sick, desperately needed to move. She unbuckled, trying to navigate the tight space. Her foot accidentally brushed the large man's shin, jolting him awake. "Watch it, kid." "What's wrong with you?" he barked, his face red with annoyance. Maya stammered a tearful apology and hurried down the aisle. When she returned, feeling a little steadier after splashing water on her face, Karen Miller was waiting for her, arms crossed, her expression a hunting glare. "Young lady," Karen said loudly enough for surrounding passengers to hear, "you need to be more careful. You're disturbing other passengers." Maya's throat tightened. 30 minutes crawled by. Karen returned, this time carrying a tablet, her face set in a grim determination that broadcast her intent throughout the cabin. She stood over Maya's seat and announced loudly, "Miss, I need to see your ticket again." Maya, her hands shaking, pulled out her boarding pass. Karen examined it with theatrical flair, then declared the ticket was purchased less than 24 hours ago and was flagged as potentially fraudulent, a complete and verifiable lie. The pretense of procedure was thin, yet the public accusation made Maya feel small and guilty. Sarah Chen appeared again, her face flushed with horror. "Diane, what are you doing?" Preston verified her ticket at the gate. Karen snapped, her voice rising to a near scream. "Stay out of this, Sarah. I'm following protocol for potentially fraudulent tickets. This is a security matter now." The entire cabin was watching, some passengers looking away in discomfort, others filming openly. Karen turned back to the trembling 8-year-old. "Until I can verify this ticket's validity with the gate, I'm afraid you can't occupy a paying passenger seat." She delivered the ultimate cruelty with a cold finality, pointing down to the narrow aisle space between rows 12C and 12D. "You're going to need to sit on the floor until we sort this out." Maya's world tilted. With tears streaming down her face, the brave facade finally crumbled. She sank down onto the dirty, chemical-smelling carpet, pulling her knees up to her chest. Her crisp white dress with sunflowers, the dress her mother loved, was instantly stained by the grime. In the next row, a young passenger named Chloe Davis angled her phone carefully, whispering, "This is so messed up," making sure she captured every second of the injustice. Tears streamed down her brown cheeks, soaking the collar of her white dress as Maya sank down onto the dirty, chemical-smelling carpet, completely unaware that the passenger named Chloe Davis was already uploading the unconscionable video to the internet. The injustice is clear, and the sight of Maya, our brave 8-year-old, on that cold, dirty floor breaks the heart. If you are watching this and feeling the powerful outrage that comes when innocence is attacked, let me know you're locked in for the truth by commenting the number 8 for her age below. Karen Miller believes she has won this battle, but the reckoning for her cruel judgment is about to land faster than this plane. To ensure you never miss a moment when power and accountability finally collide, hit that subscribe button and join the Black King community. Your continued support ensures these important stories of resilience and justice are always told. Now, let's turn the page and witness the moment everything changes. The cold, dirty carpet was rough against Maya's cheek, but the quiet click of the cockpit door opening was the sound of a reckoning Karen Miller couldn't stop. Captain David Lee, a man whose bearing and silver-threaded hair spoke of 3 decades of experience, stepped out of the cockpit. He was heading back to the lavatory, mentally reviewing the approach into Denver, when he glanced down the economy aisle. He stopped completely. There, curled into herself on the filthy carpet, was a small child in a soiled white dress. The sight of the 8-year-old on the floor of his aircraft was something Captain Lee, despite 20,000 flight hours, had never witnessed. His voice cut through the cabin, not loud, but carrying an unmistakable authority. "What is going on here?" Karen Miller, who had been organizing napkins in the galley, spun around, her expression flipping instantly from defensive contempt to a sudden, terrible panic. She tried to deploy her shield of technical language. "Captain, we have a ticketing issue with this passenger." "I'm following protocol for—" Captain Lee interrupted, his gaze fixed on the child. "She's a child. Why is she on the floor?" The cruel laughter Karen had directed at Maya was about to echo back at her as a wave of devastating corporate panic. Ignoring Karen's flustered excuses about double booking and security concerns, Captain Lee walked down the aisle and knelt, bringing himself down to the child's level. His voice, which had been steel towards Karen, became gentle and kind. "What's your name, sweetheart?" Maya looked up, her eyes red and swollen from crying. She whispered, "Maya Johnson." For a moment, the captain's face remained kind, focused on the frightened girl. Then, the name registered. His eyes widened slightly. He stood up slowly, the transition from father figure to commanding executive complete. He turned to face Karen, his voice quiet but intense. "Diane," he said, using the flight attendant's first name, "do you know who this child's mother is?" "That is Evelyn Johnson, CEO of Astrotech. We are negotiating a multi-million-dollar contract with her right now." The words landed like bombs in the silent cabin. Karen's jaw went slack. She went from flushed defiance to an ash-gray pallor in seconds, the blood-red lipstick seeming garish against her fear. Captain Lee continued, his voice now rising, ensuring every passenger heard the magnitude of the mistake. "You just forced the daughter of our most crucial business partner to sit on the floor of my aircraft." It was then that Karen truly saw the cabin, the phones held everywhere, openly and discreetly, recording her downfall. Karen Miller's face visibly drains of color as she sees the flash of cell phones recording the scene, realizing her prejudiced act has cost the airline hundreds of millions of dollars. Captain Lee turned to the kind junior attendant, Sarah Chen. "Get Miss Johnson to first class." "No. Get her whatever she needs. And Karen, don't leave this aircraft when we land. Operations will be waiting." The applause began subtly, a ripple that grew into a wave of sound as Maya, safe and wrapped in a plush blanket in first class, realized the other passengers were celebrating her vindication. Sarah Chen, the junior flight attendant, had gently escorted Maya up to the spacious window seat in first class, 2A. Sarah, visibly fighting back tears, apologized profusely, tucking a soft blanket around Maya and bringing her a glass of orange juice and real cookies, not the packaged kind from economy. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart," Sarah whispered, her kindness a balm to Maya's trauma. I should have fought harder. Meanwhile, isolated in the galley, Karen Miller's world was collapsing. The viral video Chloe Davis uploaded was already a digital storm, confirming to Karen that her anonymity and her career was over. She checked her phone. The view count was climbing so fast it was blurring her vision. #Justice for Maya was trending. She realized the full, terrifying meaning of the captain's parting words. Her 22 years of seniority, her armor, was useless against this public reckoning. The plane touched down smoothly in Denver. Captain Lee's voice came over the PA system, cutting through the post-flight chatter. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated. We have some personnel who need to board before deplaning. The forward door opened, and the air of corporate crisis was immediate. Sandra Voss, the vice president of operations, dressed in a sharp navy suit, boarded, flanked by Jerome Takahashi from legal and 2 airport security officers. Their expressions were grim, their focus singular. They walked straight to Karen in the galley. Sandra Voss wasted no words. Diane Hutchcraft, she said, her voice cold and professional. You are placed on immediate suspension. You will surrender all credentials and leave airport property immediately. When Karen tried to protest, citing protocol, Jerome Takahashi cut her off with the efficiency of a trained lawyer. There is no protocol that allows you to put a child on the cabin floor. You violated every company policy and basic human decency. Your employment is effectively over. Karen was pale and shaking as the security officers flanked her, escorting her down the aisle. As she passed through the economy cabin, past the very passengers she had commanded, dismissed, and offended, the climax of public justice unfolded. The cabin erupted. The passengers, who had been silent witnesses to her cruelty, now found their voice. The applause began subtly, then grew into a thunderous, sustained demonstration. They weren't clapping out of personal spite, but celebrating the fact that injustice was met with immediate accountability. Karen, keeping her head down, hurried faster, her public downfall complete. The applause finally died down, and the remaining passengers began to deplane. The last passengers to deplane, the Thompson family, who took Maya's seat, quickly slipped out, keeping their heads down and avoiding eye contact, unaware that social media would soon identify them for their complicity. The embrace on the jetway was less a hug and more a fierce, protective fusion as Evelyn Johnson pulled her crying daughter, Maya, away from the scene of the trauma. Evelyn, the composed CEO, had arrived at the gate sprinting, her heels clicking against the terminal floor, driven by a primal need for her child's safety. She scooped up Maya, holding her tightly as the little girl sobbed into her shoulder. Maya's voice, muffled and broken, recounted the horror. The words, "They made me sit on the floor, Mama," whispered by Maya, ignited a cold, calculated fury in Evelyn, confirming her resolve to act not just as a mother, but as a... Evelyn whispered comforting words, kissing the top of Maya's head and smelling the familiar scent of coconut in her hair. After a moment, the crisis management team approached. Sandra Voss and Jerome Takahashi wore expressions of utter professional defeat, offering formal, corporate apologies and desperate pleas. Mrs. Johnson, Sandra began, her voice strained, we cannot express how deeply sorry we are. We must discuss the Astrotech contract and how we can make this right. Evelyn gently put Maya down, holding her small hand securely. Her voice, usually warm and commanding in a boardroom, was now ice-cold and controlled. She didn't let them finish. She cut them off instantly. Evelyn announced the immediate cancellation of the Astrotech contract. She looked Sandra Voss directly in the eye, delivering the ultimate cost of Karen Miller's prejudice. The merger discussions we've been having for 6 months, they're over. Done. Her voice gained strength, fueled by maternal rage and moral certainty. She delivered the final lesson. I will not have my company associated with an airline that allows its staff to abuse children. My daughter's dignity is not for sale. Sandra and Jerome stood stunned, watching the lucrative deal vanish in 6 minutes. Evelyn didn't wait for a response. She delivered her final statement, cold and decisive, letting the executives know the true gravity of their failure. The contract is over. This is over. My lawyers will be in touch about the lawsuit. She squeezed Maya's hand once more. As mother and daughter walked toward the terminal, Maya, holding her mother's hand tight, looked back only once, realizing that the simple act of survival was powerful enough to change the rules. The roar of the engine faded, but the echoes of a child's dignity and a mother's fierce resolve resonated far beyond the airport terminal. This story reminds us that kindness is not merely an option, but a mirror. When we judge a soul by their skin or their circumstances, we reveal the true measure of our own character. Just as the smallest rivet can secure the wing of the largest jet, a simple act of respect can hold the world together. May we choose compassion first, knowing that the most powerful currency in the world is not $1 million contract, but the quiet, unconditional regard we owe every human heart.